I'm a full-time student, a full-time worker, and a single mother of a 7-month-old. My parents cut off the money they saved for me the moment I got pregnant. Now they want me to take 2 days off work and drive 6 hours to see them, and they're calling me selfish for asking them to cover my lost wages. Let me back up, because there's a lot of context here and I want to be fair to everyone involved, even the people who are currently making my life significantly harder than it needs to be. I'm a university student in the UK. Before I started, my parents had been saving money specifically so I could afford to go wherever I got into. This wasn't about tuition, we have Student Finance England for that, and everyone in the UK knows that's just a graduate tax in disguise that you pay back over 30 years before it gets wiped, so it's not like anyone's sitting on a mountain of debt they have to pay back tomorrow. No, the money my parents saved was for living costs, because anyone who's been to university in the UK knows that where you study matters enormously when it comes to cost of living. London is a different planet to somewhere like Hull. The area around the top-ranked universities is, predictably, eye-wateringly expensive, because that's how desirable areas work. I got into a great university. It's in one of those high cost of living areas. My parents were proud, I was excited, and the plan was simple. They'd release the money they'd saved for me in installments, mirroring the way Student Finance England pays out its maintenance loan, 3 payments a year, one at the start of each term. This meant I had a predictable income one could budget around. I also got a part-time job on top of it, because the cost of living where I study doesn't mess around, and I wanted to be financially responsible rather than just coasting on money that was being handed to me. Life was manageable. Not luxurious, not comfortable in the way I'd been comfortable at home, but manageable. I knew what was coming in and I knew what was going out, and I made it work. Then I got pregnant. I'm not going to go into the details of my relationship or how the pregnancy happened or what went wrong there, because frankly it's not relevant and I'm not going to perform my personal life for people's judgment. What I will say is that I made the decision, my decision, made by me, about my body and my future, that I wanted to keep the baby. I did the maths. I looked at my income, I looked at my expenses, I looked at what maternity provisions exist for students and workers, and I concluded that it was tight but doable. The key word being doable. Key condition being, my income stays roughly the same. My parents had a different idea. Within a relatively short time of telling them I was keeping the baby, they informed me that the money they'd been giving me, the money they'd saved specifically for my university years, specifically for my living costs during this period of my life, was for education only. They said they couldn't in good conscience continue to fund a lifestyle choice they disagreed with. I want to sit with that for a second. Money saved for my education, given to support me through university, was now being withheld because I was pregnant. My education hadn't changed. My university hadn't changed. My cost of living hadn't changed, if anything, it was about to go up significantly. But the money stopped. So I redid the maths. And this time the maths said, you cannot afford to stay part-time. You cannot afford to work the hours you were working before. To cover the gap my parents had just blown in my finances, I had to go full-time at my job. I had to hustle for extra shifts, pick up overtime when it was offered, and completely restructure my life around the reality that the safety net had just been pulled out from under me at about the most vulnerable moment possible. I did it though. I want to be really clear about that. I did it. I went full-time. I rearranged my degree schedule so I could manage both. I made sacrifices I'm not going to list here because I don't want this to become a grief list. The point is that I made them, without complaint, and I got on with it. My daughter was born at the end of last August. She's now just over 7 months old. She's healthy, she's growing, she's hitting her milestones, and she is the best thing that has ever happened to me. She is also the reason that every single penny of my income is spoken for before it even hits my bank account, because that's what it costs to raise a child in a high cost of living area on a student worker's salary with no partner and no parental support. Here's where we are now. My parents and I have gotten our first vaccinations. My nan is fully vaccinated. My sister and her boyfriend are also vaccinated and doing fine. We've all been isolating responsibly, doing what we're supposed to do. Life is beginning, slowly and cautiously, to open up again. My dad's birthday is this Friday. My nan's birthday is the Tuesday after. Because the dates are close together, my parents have decided they want to combine the celebrations and have everyone come to Nan's house this weekend, me, my daughter, and my sister. Nan's house is 6 hours away from where I live. 6 hours each way. 12 hours of driving for a weekend trip, before you account for time at the destination. I said I couldn't afford it. And I mean that literally. This isn't me being dramatic, this isn't me prioritizing other things, this isn't me making excuses. I cannot afford to lose 1 to 2 days of wages, which is what a 12-hour round-trip weekend visit would cost me, because I'd have to rearrange or miss shifts at the job that is currently keeping me and my infant daughter housed and fed. When you have no financial cushion whatsoever, missing shifts isn't an inconvenience. It's a structural crisis. It means something doesn't get paid. It means something my daughter needs doesn't get bought. There's no buffer. There's no, I'll cover it next month. Every week's wages are allocated to that week's costs. My parents pointed out that my Student Finance England maintenance loan just came through. It actually came in a week earlier than I'd told them to expect, which they found meaningful somehow. They said, "You've just had a payment come in, you can afford to miss work for a couple of days." They said, "We haven't met the baby yet. We haven't seen you in a year. We want to see you." I said, "If you want to see us, you'll need to cover the wages I'd lose, because I can't take the hit." Given that they have the money they were saving for me and are no longer giving it to me, and given that they are the ones who created the financial situation I'm currently in, I thought this was a reasonable thing to ask. They said I was being incredibly unfair. They said they couldn't believe I'd guilt-trip them over what they did with their money. Let me unpack that, because I think there's something genuinely revealing in those words. What they did with their money. The money they saved for me. The money that was, by their own description at the time they were saving it, intended for my university years. The money that I had factored into my financial plan before I got pregnant, and the withdrawal of which is directly responsible for the position I'm now in. That money is now just their money that they did something with, and my pointing out the consequences of that decision is guilt-tripping. I offered a compromise. I offered to FaceTime into the birthday celebrations via my sister. She could pass the phone around, I could say happy birthday to my dad and my nan, they could see the baby on screen, we could have a moment together even across the distance. It's not ideal. I know it's not ideal. But it costs nothing and requires nothing of me except finding a free hour, which is also not guaranteed but is far more achievable than 2 days off work. They said my mentioning time constraints was itself guilt-tripping. They said they shouldn't have to pay for my presence. They said I was being tactless and selfish, and that if I came to the celebration, they didn't want to hear anything about money. I want to think about that last part very carefully. They don't want to hear about money. From the person who has no money because they took it away. From the person who had to completely restructure her entire life at 7 months pregnant because her support system evaporated. From the person who is now working full-time and studying full-time and raising a child full-time, alone, with no partner and no parental financial support, and who is being asked to take 2 days off work with approximately 48 hours notice to drive across the country for a birthday party. They don't want to hear about money. I told them, as plainly as I could, that they created this situation. I told them that if they were genuinely surprised, not performatively surprised, but actually, sincerely surprised, that I couldn't afford a cross-country trip on short notice, then they had no idea what the real world looks like for someone in my position. That the combination of full-time student, full-time worker, and single mother is not a combination that comes with slack in the schedule or wiggle room in the budget. That I now have an appearance fee not because I'm being difficult but because my time costs me money in a way that their time does not, and asking me to give up that time without compensation is asking me to take a financial hit I simply cannot absorb. That's when my sister got involved. My sister's boyfriend also had his SFE maintenance loan come in recently, earlier than expected, same as mine. My sister decided that this was evidence that I had the money to make this trip and was simply choosing not to. She called my appearance greedy and entitled. She said it was bordering on extortion. She said I was trying to make my parents feel guilty about money I had no right to. No right to. The money set aside specifically for me, for this period of my life, for my university years. I have no right to it. I've spent a lot of time sitting with this. I've turned it over from every angle I can think of, trying to find the version where my family is right and I'm wrong. I want to find it. I want to find the angle where I'm being unreasonable, because that would be so much simpler than the alternative, which is that the people who are supposed to be my support network have fundamentally misunderstood what support means. Here's what I keep coming back to: nobody is disputing the facts. My parents agree that they stopped giving me the money. My parents agree that they haven't met my daughter. My parents agree that they're asking me to make a 12-hour round trip with 48 hours notice. My sister agrees that my SFE loan is earmarked, as all money I receive is earmarked, for specific existing costs. Nobody is arguing about the facts. They're arguing about whether those facts give me the right to say no. Or more precisely, they're arguing that those facts are irrelevant, and that family obligation should override financial reality. They're arguing that love doesn't have a price tag and I shouldn't put one on it. But I'm not putting a price on love. I'm pointing out that my presence at a party has a literal, non-metaphorical cost that I cannot cover, and asking the people who created that situation to help cover it. If my car broke down and I needed a tow to get to the party, no one would call me greedy for asking them to pay for the tow. This is the same thing. The expense is real. The inability to cover it is real. The request is reasonable. What isn't reasonable, what I have only recently allowed myself to name as unreasonable, is the expectation that I should absorb unlimited financial damage in silence rather than make the people who caused it feel momentarily uncomfortable. What isn't reasonable is deciding that the money saved for me over years of my childhood is retroactively conditional on my reproductive choices, and then being offended when I point out the consequences. What isn't reasonable is calling a person greedy for trying to survive. My daughter is 7 months old. She is fed, she is warm, she is loved, and she is growing up knowing that her mother worked herself to the bone to make sure she wanted for nothing. That didn't happen by accident. That happened because I made hard choices and asked hard questions and refused to pretend that the financial reality I was living in was anything other than what it was. I am not going to start pretending now. So, happy birthday, Dad. Happy birthday, Nan. I love you both. I hope the party is wonderful, and I hope you'll look at your granddaughter on a screen and feel something other than disappointment that she came with conditions you're not willing to meet.